Hi, this is John Wren. This is the special edition of the Startup Show. It's a combination of what I do each Friday and also something that I'm hoping that people will watch when they first start thinking about becoming involved in some of the activities that I'm offering people. And who I have in mind for this is presidential candidates. I think I have an idea that if one of the candidates in either party would pick this up, that it could possibly do them a lot of good. So listen up, give me your feedback after the show. Do you agree, disagree? And if you're a presidential candidate especially, I'd be very, very interested in hearing your take on what we're going to share today. Now, my name is John Wren, and I have been doing business consulting for a long time, been starting the Small Business Chamber of Commerce for quite a while. 20 years ago, I started a startup workshop. 5280 magazine says it's infused Denver with an entrepreneurial spirit. I have conducted it pretty much every week since it first started 20 years ago. I've talked to all kinds of people thinking of starting, wanting to start, people who have started as a consultant, and then also as a facilitator for this startup workshop. And I'm going to talk to you today about sort of where we're at now, where that came from, and what do I see ahead for us as we recover the true American dream. There's a lot of talk about the American dream, but it got co-opted. It was turned into a sales slogan for everything from Lionel trains to owning your own home with a white picket fence around it. The original meaning of the word was the opportunity that each person in America had to get ahead, to better themselves. That is the true American dream. And it was inspired by our higher power, God, as we understand God in this free country without a state religion, protecting each person's right to have their own religion, not in any way interfering with that. By the rule book that we all play by, the Constitution. That's the thing that makes us Americans, as Tom Hanks says in the new movie Bridge of Spies, which is a terrific movie. I think it's an example of what has happened in this country that has made us such a great country. Tom Hanks didn't go to a weekend workshop and cook up what he ended up doing. It was what was put in front of him. And he loved his neighbor as himself. Who's the neighbor? The guy over in the ditch that needs some help. And Tom Hanks helps that person. And I think it's the way inspiration, true inspiration, not just blind optimism, but true inspiration. I believe it's an example of how that works. And Tom Hanks, Bridge of Spies, I recommend it highly. I'm going to learn more about the true man that story's based on. Apparently he was 100% Irish. His both parents had come over from Ireland, and he, I've got to believe, had a faith that inspired the work that he ended up doing, saving thousands of lives, literally. Well, we all have a mission. I'm on a mission from God, and my mission is to help you find your mission if you haven't already, and help you succeed in it. It's we doing it together. Now, I have the mission, you have a mission, but together we can do it. On our own, isolated and alone, we shiver, die a miserable death that's exaggerating it, but it's not too far off the mark. You see that happen with people. Has a tendency to happen with all of us, especially me. Maybe I'm just looking at myself, but I have a tendency to isolate. Maybe that's why I am such a group person. My brother says my tombstone is going to say he never met a group he didn't like. And there is some truth to that I think most groups provide a certain level of benefit, although there are some very toxic groups, and some of them can end up eating up a lot of time without very much return. Where I've come from, I could bore you with a story from being 2 years old at my dad's side as he started a business that we would sell together 20 years later. He built it up, sold at just the right time, got out with a cash sale, and then got cancer and died way too early. He was a true entrepreneur. And every night at our house was like having a business seminar. Dad would review the day, and we would sit around the table, which, the dinner was always at 6 o'clock. Dad would be home nearly every night. We'd sit around the table, listen to him, share what we'd done. It was a great experience. And that dinner together is such an important time. That and the very end of the day, tucking my kids in, those are my best memories of family. I had later, for a period of time, we operated that way, and certainly with my growing up and the way that Janet grew up. Her mom and dad were very much the same, and now that's becoming a very rare commodity. Most divorced, just like Janet and I did it, which is so unfortunate. Now, who knows what the future might hold? But I started that on a moment of inspiration. I picked her up and knew I was going to marry her on that first date at Christmas, looking through the window, seeing her sitting by the Christmas tree, by the fireplace, and I knew that this is who I was going to marry. And we did marry a couple of years later and had 4 wonderful children. We've got 4 grandkids now. But that happened with that moment of what I believe was true inspiration. Now, I think I could have implemented much better. I had some personal problems, and I'm really surprised Janet could stand it as long as she did. We had a 23-year marriage, and that was 24 years ago that we had to bring that to an end, unfortunately, at least an end since then. Who knows about the future? Hope springs eternal, and you never know for sure. But you see that in the Tom Hanks in his movie. There's this moment where I believe grace opens up opportunities for us, and we either step through them or we don't. And that's in work, it's in our personal life, and what we have done in our secular, materialistic society, and I think the Pope is right on target with this, is we've substituted market research, planning, we've substituted those kinds of activities for that moment of inspiration when we find our true calling. Now, it's no wonder that we've abandoned it. It used to be that you'd be raised in a family, you'd do what your dad did. Those days are long gone. We may have to listen a little bit more carefully these days, but there are ways to do that I believe enhance our probability of success. I do not have statistics on this. It's pretty much my own personal thinking from the observation of startups over the last 20 years. And I say I'm a recovering MBA because a lot of what I learned in graduate business school, I've had to abandon to be truly helpful to people who are starting something from zero. And I believe there is a society problem that the presidential candidates could be addressing that affects all this. And so I'm going to try to share today a little bit about what we're doing right now and why I think a presidential candidate that might incorporate some of this thinking into their campaign might leap to the head of the pack. First of all, we need to build on the successes of the past and not just look back at our shortcomings. There has become this tendency to look back and to look for the worst aspects in America. And there have been problems, slavery, the way that the Native Americans were treated, the way that women have been treated. These are worldwide problems. They're problems in America. And, I believe in knowing history and trying to not repeat those same errors. But there is this movement now where leaders are wanting restitution and apologies. And as Winston Churchill said, if we allow our present to get in a quarrel with our past, we shall not have a future. So I believe what we need to look back at is what's gone right in America, what has worked for us. And the Pope is right on target with some of his economic pronouncements. It's taken me a little while to catch up with him, but well, and plus he recently gave another talk and he cited one of my absolute favorite authors. And then I sort of started seeing through that lens. E.F. Schumacher, Small is Beautiful, Economics as If People Mattered. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. But what Schumacher saw was that as organizations grew, they turned into bureaucracies. Now, a bureaucracy has certain advantages. Max Weber saw that, you could have a government bureaucracy that functioned efficiently. The problem is you may end up with a very efficient government that's doing exactly the wrong thing, like burning people in concentration camps. It's more than just efficiency that we're looking for in the government. And, must the reach exceed the grasp, or what's a heaven for? Hopefully, we can each reach out, find a mission, help each other achieve our missions, but that's done on a small scale. And Schumacher has one of the best ways I've seen before or after that book was popular of expressing that. Now, maybe there's a recent author that I've missed. If you know of such a person, I would love to find out about it. What Schumacher says is that if a business grows beyond the point where the owner, and he doesn't think it's owned by everybody, it's where the owner can personally know each one of the employees. Who are they married or not? What's their family? What's their current situation? And if there's more than 300, it's very difficult for an owner to do that. So he thought that was the ideal size for a business, that it was successful. And well, now how big are businesses now? The Bank of England, is it, that's laying off 35,000 people. It was just announced in today's papers. 35,000 people they're going to lay off. These companies, global corporations, have grown incredibly. And Irving Kristol said to me one time, not just to me, but I was attending a talk he gave at the University of Denver, and he said that these global corporations are really socialism in sheepskin. And, Bernie Sanders, the candidate, is saying that he's a socialist. Bernie, stop saying that. You're not. You need to look into what's the definite. Do you really want the hammer owned by the government, or this, socialism and sheepskin corporation? Do you want all the tools owned by these large organizations, and that we all work in these large bureaucracies? Really, truly, Bernie, I don't think that's what you want. And I think it's a misnomer, and you need to take a hard look at what you're saying to people, because some people hear that and then they think, oh, well, Bernie agrees with me. I think, we shouldn't have any private property. What's made this country great, and it's clear as you look back at our 235-year history, there are some very unique things that have happened with us politically, yes, but also economically. We had this concept of private ownership and a market economy, and it's driven our growth with some ups and downs. Obviously, there were problems, the bank failures, and we tried to fix that with the Federal Reserve. We may not have that quite right yet. No one would say that what we have is perfect and doesn't need any changes whatsoever. But the fact is that with that concept of private property protected by the government, with the rights that were granted to our citizens, and maybe some mistakes in the very beginning that we slowly try to rectify. But the overall general concept is that the power is in the people here, not with the monarch. Now, the monarch was seen as having a mission from God. Everybody else had a mission from the monarch. Our country is not like that. It's manifest destiny for the country, yes, there is some direction from this higher power that we all share in common, whether we want to or not. It's not just Catholics, it's not just Christians, it's all people of goodwill trying to do the right thing. If you're just a mafia gangster, Tony Soprano, well, maybe this doesn't apply. Although even Tony Soprano, there was one episode where he sort of saw that they had a mission. They saw themselves as Roman soldiers. I think that's very misguided. If he could have, maybe come to an Idea Cafe startup workshop, maybe we could have gotten Tony Soprano on the right track. The other real strong element of America is that we look forward, not backward. I just subscribed to Ancestry.com. I finally linked up me and my kids to Sir Christopher Wren. I'm second cousin, 10th removed. My kids are 11th removed to Sir Christopher Wren. We had common grandparents. Culbreth Wren ended up having a child who had Sir Christopher Wren. And Culbreth had Richard, and Richard was the first Wren to move to this country. Now, that may not be true. Actually, there is a descendant, poor Will, they called him. Sir Christopher's, he apparently had some sort of a learning disability, and he came over here sooner. And the Sooner Wrens are descended from poor Will, not Culbreth. And, which branch, this is all new to me. And my point is that really, who knows who they are related to in our country? You go to a church and you say, who knows who their grandparents were? Everybody holds up their hand pretty much. Who were your great-grandparents? Hands go down. Who were your great-great-great-grandparents? No one knows that in our country. Now, in England, it goes back and back and back. Ben Franklin went over to England to trace his family history back. That was the inspiration for his book, which has helped so many people, the autobiography of Ben Franklin. It was published right after he died. It was originally a letter to his son, and the way it starts off is talking about this, where they came from. So where we come from in this country is not nearly so important to us as it has been in the rest of the world. And we had this idea that all people are created equal. We all should have an equal chance. That's the American dream, that we all have a chance to get ahead. And that's clearly not true today. Now, why not? Edmund Phelps wrote a book, Mass Flourishing, which should be required reading for all presidential candidates. Mass Flourishing looks at the phenomena that we're encountering right now, where we have this illusion of great creativity and prosperity, but the reality is much different. The creativity is being poured into new games for the computer, new apps for our cell phone, things like this, and they may create a certain amount of efficiency and so forth. But America used to be far different when it was smaller, when these giant corporations didn't dominate the business landscape like they do today. Now, I in no way want to eliminate that through regulation. I think every time we try to regulate that kind of thing out of existence, we just make the problem worse. What I want to try to do is inspire maybe you who's watching this to really put in the forefront of your mind that we need to get back to the type of economy that we have had in this country that has benefited us so greatly: private property, market economy, and the chance for the small guy to get started in a small scale way. A lot of these laws and so-called helps for startups are being ginned up with corporate support, who it's really clear to me gin them up to keep people from starting. They don't want to help people start. They want to hold it down. And Dr. Amar Bahidi, while he was Harvard University teaching entrepreneurship, he is the expert in startup. His book, Origin and Evolution of New Businesses, has been called by the publisher of Inc. magazine the most important book ever written about startup up to that point, and I believe he would second that motion today, that particular publisher. But everybody is co-opted out now to this small business administration approach, which Bahiti's research demonstrated is not the way businesses actually start. And if you have a business and it's done careful market research, careful strategic planning, like I was taught to do in graduate business school, it's the mark of failure, not success. Successful businesses start. John Brackney, it's great. John Brackney, Idea Cafe, it comes up. He gave us a talk on how do you start a business? You find a customer. If we find a customer and then follow the money, it grows eventually into a business. Now, eventually you tidy up with the market research to help other people understand the opportunity that you saw instinctively, because you're on a mission from God. They're not. They need to see the research. And this mission from God is, I'm really not kidding about that. And I believe this country is on a mission from God, this manifest destiny. We've forgotten that. And what we need to do is recover as individuals. We need to recover. Recovery, alcoholism, drug abuse, there's a meaning to that word that some people have that's very negative. I think of recovery as in my high school and college football days, that you do a drill, hit the sled, get back up, hit it again, and the coach is saying, hit. You hit, drop to the ground, and he says, recover. You get back up on your feet, hit, recover. And, recovery, getting back up on our feet, being in a good hitting position is necessary for startup. So recovery first, and then we hit, and we need to get back up again. So recovery during startup. And after we've started and the business is growing, it's the same hit and recover. We need to get back up on our feet. So recovery is not a one-time event. It's necessary, and it's necessary, and it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. There are people that recover, they get back up on their feet, and they don't hit the sled again. That's no good. So startup is hitting the sled again. You get back up and hit the sled. And if you're in a business and it's growing, you keep doing that. Hit, recover. If you hit, you can't get back up again. It's a longer term recovery. You get back up, there's nothing to hit. That's when startup becomes important. And this could be that you're in a job that you hate right now. 80% of the people in America, it used to be that we'd be driving to work thinking of a better way to do our job. That was like what Americans did. We thought of how to improve what we were doing. Those days are gone for the time being. What people do now is drive to work thinking about how much they hate their job, how much they hate their boss, and what they're going to do that weekend. Sports and entertainment have taken over our imaginations, and it's crippling us. Edmund Phelps, Mass Flourishing, documents this phenomenon. He says what we've lost is our dynamism and our vitalism because of these large organizations. Corporatism and socialism are killing our country. Now, I don't believe in regulating that problem away. What can the government do to help? Get out of it. Do less. Maybe help individuals that are hitting, recovering. Maybe there is a role for the government to play there. But as far as startup and growth of businesses, if we have good soil, rain, we plant good seeds, those businesses are going to grow up. Now, it's not a we. This is the inspiration. This is being on the mission from God. I believe that through our personal experiences as a consumer, our personal experiences in the job that we have right now, we end up finding out what our mission is. Richard Bowles, What Color is Your Parachute, writes about this, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. If you read What Color is Your Parachute before like 2011 or so, 2012, you really don't know what color is your parachute now. There is a change in orientation where he very much sees this idea of being on a mission from God. Now, you still do the footwork. He still has exercises and things like that you mull things over with, but you do them as spiritual exercises, not as something divorced from this concept of, what's my job here? What have I been led to do? What's my calling? You're very, very common now to say, what is your calling? And the calling is this mission. And it's not just Catholics, not just Christians, it's not just religious people, it's all people of goodwill. And I think that the place where this type of philosophy is best seen today, it says that we're going to be, the last will be first and the first will be last. Well, the last have been the Skid Row bum, the alcoholic, the person that has been severely marginalized for probably all of history. And in 1934, this program came along, Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill Wilson had this sense of calling, kept after it, found Dr. Bob Smith in Akron, Ohio, through an unusual combination of events. And they started this program where people, through that powerlessness, something they can't control, reach out, grasp the hand of God, and are led on to a better life through the remainder of the steps. And one of the sayings, I think everyone, very few people are alcoholics. There are some drug addicts, most people, they're normal people. Although Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest in Albuquerque, has written a book in which he says he believes almost everybody in our society today is addicted to something. It can be sports, it can be the computer, it can be your family. Maybe all you do is family stuff. You have no community connection at all. That can be an addiction just as bad as anything else. I first heard an Episcopal priest say that, and I had no idea what he was talking about. If I look back at my family, when it broke up, it may have suffered from my being addicted to it. I had chaos in my life in every area. I had a lot of work experience. Creative, I would see and go on to new things that were more interesting, but it was chaos. And there were some things I had to address, depression and so forth, that I'm a different person today than I was back then. And part of it was that addiction to family. And there are ways that you identify that. But Richard Rohr has written a book about this that I highly recommend. It's not just for alcoholics and drug addicts. He says that everybody in our society today is addicted to something. It can be entertainment. There's all kinds of substitutes for this concept of a higher power that get in our way. And this is no substitute for any religion that you might be a part of. It complements all religions. And I don't know of a religion that would say that it's unhealthy. But the book he's written that I recommend is called Breathing Underwater. And it's the 12 Steps for Everybody. And we have a meeting. It's an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. But this meeting is always, they say that it's an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting because they always chair the meeting. But they welcome everyone to come who wants to change, who sees that they have some sort of an addiction, that they have some sort of a struggle. It may be alcoholism, maybe drug addiction, but it may be something else, maybe codependency, but whatever reason, it's the 12 steps as a way out. I think some people end up having an addiction to being unemployed. I see people show up at our Idea Cafe startup workshops, and they have great ideas, they never get a customer, they never get one check. And I look at it and I think they're addicted to the activities that are sort of surrounding, so the startup idea has become very social, and there's groups and groups and groups. And, my brother, I think, has a good point in one way. You can do too many groups. I think everybody should have some, but if all you're doing is going to groups, and calling that you're starting, well, not really. starting is when you get on the phone and call and offer to go and help somebody. And but this Root and Branch is in Denver. It's at 1311 York Street on the 3rd floor every Monday at 4:30, and it's open to everybody. Give it a try. I'm there from time to time. It is an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but you don't have to. You can be as anonymous as you want to. And I encourage you to do it. Root and Branch, Mondays at 4:30, 1311 York Street. And that's coming up this Monday. But if you recover, you get back up on your feet, then you have to hit. That's the start. Hit, start, then grow and flourish. Now, flourish is a term Martin Seligman developed. Edmund Phelps has admitted to me that yes, indeed, he had read that book, and that's where the flourish came from, because these things have been in decline. Seligman teases out 5 qualities that he say comprise flourishing from his standpoint as a clinical psychologist. And the P is positive affect. He's been called the happy doctor. He's Seligman's the founder of positive psychology. And P is exactly that you feel good. So do you feel good? You might not. If you don't, you're not flourishing. But even if you feel good, and Seligman writes about this extensively, it's his latest book. It's not brand new now, but it's still worth reading. Flourishing. Martin Seligman, he says that even if you're feeling good about things, your life may not be so hot. And these 4 dimensions help you take a look at that. E is engagement. Do you have work or an activity that sort of puts you in a different place? Chechen Minga calls that flow. You have this moment from time to time when you're so engaged that you lose track of things. That's engagement. So PERMA, P, positive affect, E, engagement, R is relationships. How is it with you and other people? In your family, your neighborhood, your community? Are you connecting with people? Or are you isolated and alone? Manipulative? If you are with people, you're not really with them, you're somewhere else. M is meaning. Do you see a big picture? I think that's talking about higher power. Yeah, it's how I see a higher power. Is there meaning? But there are other people that see that other ways. But is there a big picture? Do you understand not only your own mission, but the larger mission that it connects to? And then A is accomplishment. PERMA. A is accomplishment. Are you, now it may be that you're a bridge champion. That's what's important to you, or a chess champion. You know, more power to you. But if you have decided to start a business, are you accomplishing things that you set out to do? And PERMA becomes a good scorecard for looking at how we're doing. Now, there is a downside to it, I think. Seligman, and I have not seen this written about, Seligman installed this for the military under General Casey. He writes about that in the book Flourishing. And they definitely have it. You can go there and look on their website, and there it is. And but, you know, they've had a tremendous problem with suicide. And the problem is, if you start focusing on these factors, keeping score of your own life as carefully as Seligman talks, you know, I think for a psychologist, that's probably a very useful tool. It's a way to help treat people when they come in. And some of us need that kind of help. I've needed it. I value it highly. But that's not an individual leading their own life. And, you know, it's just, you know, what I do best when I'm doing it, I don't always do it, but if I have a time in the morning when I can reflect and listen, some people call it, you know, two-way prayer, that I'm present with my higher power and I'm listening to where am I being led today. And my plan for the day comes out of that. I am much more PERMA-like, you know, but if I get into my head and I'm figuring it out and I'm there a lot, you know, it can end up making the day very, very difficult. In that Army program, one of the problems we've had is soldiers coming back and suiciding. And I'd just like to see a study where they look at the suicides and I did this very methodical approach to life. Did that affect the soldiers? Now, maybe that they're coming back to a society where this flourishing has all but disappeared, and they see the people they're working with hating their jobs. I know a woman that just had a job. She stayed one day because the people that she was working with are so negative. She said it felt like she was with a pack of wolves. So this was a big company with a good reputation. But those environments are so common today that if maybe this is a good technique, but the soldier comes back and hits that and says, this is not going to work for me. Some of them re-enlist. Some of them hopefully get help. But there are a high number of suicides, and maybe that's part of the mission that they were on over in Iraq, and it was the damage that was done to them. But there may be something else going on there. And because I've tried to use Seligman's technique, and I've had a hard time doing it consistently. As a daily tool, for sure, it was not helpful to me as compared to the more the examine that nation spirituality talks about, or the 11th step in a 12-step program. But there are lots of techniques, and I've run over today, but these are the things that I'm involved in. It's evolved to the activities. I'm going to be talking about this more this afternoon. Panera Bread Cafe, 13th and Grant. No matter what week you look at this, that's where I'm at. Panera Bread, 13th and Grant at 2 p.m. Now, that's a bad time, except for the people we're trying to help. This is a meeting for people who are not sure what they're going to do Monday morning. So if that's you, come and join us this afternoon, every Friday afternoon, Panera Bread. Now, another meeting is Socrates Cafe. That's Friday evening in the same place, Panera Bread, 13th and Grant at 6 o'clock. There's also now at the University of Denver, a Panera Bread. University of Denver has a Socrates Cafe. It's in the Anderson Academic Commons, the old Penrose Library, and current periodicals. So come to one of the meetings. We'll be back here next Friday. This is put up on johnwren.com and smallbizchamber.org. If you'd like to be part of this, help us move the Small Business Chamber forward. If you'd like to facilitate a startup workshop or a Socrates Cafe, and I can help you, give me a call. Number is 303-861-1447. So this is John Wren reminding you and also reminding myself, this life is very short. Let's go get started.